The kitchen tile was cold against my cheek, and my husband's hand was around my throat, and the woman drinking my wine was smiling. Apologize. Mark's voice came down through the ringing in my ears. To her. Right now. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't blink. I could hear the small, wet sound of Vanessa taking another sip. It was our anniversary Pinot, 12th of October. 13 days away. Bought the spring before our daughter was born and labeled in his handwriting, 10th anniversary. Do not open under any circumstances. He'd opened it for her. His thumb pressed deeper into the soft place under my jaw. I counted backward from 10 the way they teach you at Quantico when you need your heart to slow down. Got to 7. He let go. I rolled onto my side. Coughed. Tasted copper. The cut was on the inside of my lip where his knuckle had caught when I tried to turn my head. I could have stopped him. Krav Maga Level 3 doesn't forget. 6 years of bureau training doesn't forget. But Lily was upstairs. Vanessa was baiting him, and every version of this story where I broke his wrist became the story he wanted. Unstable wife attacks executive husband. I needed proof he would show the world his hand. I needed my daughter safe. Vanessa stood by the wine fridge in her cream silk blouse and bare feet. She'd taken her heels off at some point, those red-soled things that cost more than my first car. She did that, made herself at home in my house. Last month, I'd found her toothbrush in the guest bathroom. She set her glass down on the counter very carefully, the way you set down something that might wake a baby. Don't make Daddy ask twice, sweetie. Her voice was soft and warm and obscene. I pushed up to my knees, pushed up to my feet, wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. The smear came away dark. I looked at Mark. 41 years old, hairline retreating at the temples, the small scar on his chin from a college rugby game he still talked about at dinner parties. The face I had loved at 28 and stopped loving on a Tuesday afternoon 18 months ago when a transaction report came across my desk with the wrong fingerprints all over it. I looked at Vanessa. 26 and beautiful and so sure of her own architecture. Okay, I whispered. Mark exhaled like a man setting down a heavy box. Good. Good girl. A creak on the stairs. Lily. Pajamas with the little moons on them. One sock on, one sock off. Clutching her stuffed rabbit by the ear, the way she'd held it since she was 2. Mommy? I was at the bottom of the stairs before my legs decided to move. My body knew the route. Hey, baby. My voice came out warm and smooth, somebody else's voice. The voice I kept in a drawer for moments like this. Mommy dropped a glass. Go back to bed. I heard yelling. Daddy and Mommy were watching a movie. It was loud. Go on. She looked past me. At Mark. At Vanessa. Who's that lady? The question landed in my chest like a small, clean stone. A friend of Daddy's bed. Now, please, sweetheart. She studied me. 8 years old and already the kind of child who studied. Then she turned and went up, slowly, the stuffed rabbit dragging behind her by one ear. I waited until I heard the door click upstairs. Then I turned around. Vanessa had picked up her clutch Goyard, the same tote she'd somehow forgotten to mention at dinner 3 weeks ago. I should go. Stay, Mark said. I walked past both of them. Claire. He caught my wrist. His grip was lighter this time, almost tender. Where are you going? Upstairs. To check on my daughter. Our daughter. Right. I slid my wrist free. Hours. I climbed the stairs. He thought he won. I had been waiting 173 days for him to expose himself beyond argument. The first time I saw Vanessa Cole, I was standing at the back of the Mint Museum ballroom with a glass of champagne. I wasn't drinking, watching her father get richer. 14 months ago. Meridian Trust Bank annual gala. Bobby Cole on stage in a charcoal suit, announcing to a room of bankers and their tanned wives that he was moving the entire $180 million Cole family treasury into our wealth management division. The room applauded. My husband applauded loudest. Mark had spent 11 months courting that account, and when Bobby finished his remarks, the CEO, Richard Stern, walked over and put a hand on Mark's shoulder and said, "Promotion's in your contract by Monday." I was still clapping when the daughter appeared at Mark's elbow. I knew her. Not personally, by file. Vanessa Cole, 25 at the time, a name I'd flagged in 3 separate suspicious activity reports during my last year at the Bureau, small ones, none prosecutable, but enough of a pattern that her face was already cataloged in the part of my brain that doesn't forget. She leaned in and said something into Mark's ear that made him laugh too loud. Then she looked across the room and saw me watching. She held my eyes for 3 seconds, smiled, lifted her champagne in my direction in the smallest possible toast. I lifted mine back. That was the night I started counting days. The first hard evidence came 173 days before the kitchen floor. A Tuesday, 11 at night. I was alone in the FIU office on the 22nd floor of the Meridian Tower, eating cold pad thai out of a plastic container while the dashboard auto-refreshed. 4 trades on a private brokerage account registered to V. Cole. Each one time-stamped within 9 minutes of an internal communication Mark had sent through his work phone. Each one in a security position Mark had explicit fiduciary knowledge of. Each one returning between 43 and 61%. Insider trading. Textbook. I didn't react. I screenshotted the dashboard, encrypted the files with AES 256, saved them to a USB drive I kept in a hollowed-out tampon box at the back of my bathroom cabinet, one of the few places in the house Mark had been trained, by his own embarrassment, never to open. The next morning at breakfast, Mark kissed the top of my head and asked if I was sleeping all right. "Just a long week," I said, and poured him coffee. 6 years at the Bureau taught me one thing. You don't arrest a man when you have evidence. You arrest him when you have inevitability. There's a question my supervisor asked me on my last day at the Charlotte field office, March 2018, when I cleaned out my desk and turned in my badge and walked out into a parking lot full of cars I would never see again. She asked me why. I told her I was getting married. I told her I wanted a family. I told her I was tired of building cases other people would close. She looked at me a long time and said, "Hutchinson, 6 years from now you're going to be sitting at a kitchen table somewhere wishing you still had this job. I want you to remember I said that." She was wrong about the timeline. It took 9. What I didn't tell her was the truth. The truth was that in October 2017, I had met a man at a charity gala at the Mint Museum, same ballroom Bobby Cole would walk into 7 years later, and that man had brought me a glass of champagne and asked me what I did for a living, and I had said forensic accountant for a small audit firm in Ballantyne, because 2 hours earlier, I had walked out of the field office with a sealed indictment file under my arm. Hutchinson Construction Holdings. Money laundering. RICO predicates. Eastern European wire transfers routed through 3 shell companies in the Caymans. The man who owned the company was Daniel Hutchinson. The man at the gala was Daniel's nephew. I did not know that yet. I would know it 3 weeks later, after we'd slept together twice, after I'd recused myself in tears in my supervisor's office, after the case got handed to an agent who let 3 pieces of evidence walk because he didn't know what to look for. Daniel never went to prison. I told Mark I was a forensic accountant for a small audit firm in Ballantyne. Then I got the job at Meridian Compliance Officer, mid-level, the kind of title a man like Mark could feel comfortable being 2 rungs above. I never corrected him. Not at our wedding. Not when his mother asked at Thanksgiving. Not when our daughter was born. Not when she said her first word and Mark joked at the dinner table that mama can balance a checkbook but can't balance a baby and his college friends laugh. I had been a special agent for 6 years. I had been Mrs. Mark Hutchinson for 9. Tonight, those 2 women were going to meet for the first time, and one of them was going to bury the other. 11:47 p.m. I sat at the desk by the bedroom window and opened the laptop. The Charlotte skyline burned in the distance, a small, bright grid of windows where other people were having other Fridays. 2-factor. Biometric. The folder I'd been building for 173 days unfolded onto the screen like a hand of cards I'd been holding under the table since spring. 47 screenshots of insider trades, 23 transaction records Bobby Cole had walked across a marble table in Founders Hall and slid toward me 3 months ago when he asked, quietly, please, if I could hold his daughter accountable without letting his money bury another scandal. A licensed investigator's report showing Vanessa's documented hotel stays with Richard Stern, her boss's boss, my husband's boss, a man whose wife had 30 years of marriage and 3 Ivy League children and no idea. The paternity question would belong to a court later. The timeline already belonged to me. Photographs of bruises, mine. time-stamped. The kitchen security camera file from the small indoor camera Sarah had insisted I install after the first documented assault. It sat in plain view on the pantry shelf, sold as a child safety camera, and Mark had laughed at it for 2 months because men like Mark only fear evidence after it has already learned their voice. I finalized 7 prepared packages. FBI Charlotte Field Office. Attention Supervisory Special Agent Diana Reeves. Quantico. Class of 2010. My bunkmate. My maid of honor. AUSA Marcus Chen. Western District. SEC Whistleblower Office. FINRA Enforcement. IRS Criminal Investigation. Margaret Stern. Sarah Vega in Atlanta. Most of the case had already been preserved through Sarah's filings. What I added that night was the final domestic violence evidence, the piece that made Mark's private cruelty impossible to reframe as a marital misunderstanding. I attached the updated dossier. I set the release for 6 o'clock in the morning. I clicked send. A small green checkmark appeared and disappeared. I sat in the dark for a minute, listened to the house. Mark was downstairs pouring himself another drink. Vanessa had already left in an Uber. Lily was upstairs, pretending to sleep, the way children pretend, with their breathing too even. I closed the laptop. Then I remembered the USB. I went to the bathroom cabinet, reached behind the 3rd row of feminine products, pulled out the small black drive I'd been adding to since 2018. I plugged it in. The directory opened. There was a file at the top I hadn't created tonight. List 3-7-2021 TXT. I knew what it was before I clicked it. I clicked it anyway. A document I'd written 3 years ago, in another bathroom, in another version of this marriage. The night Mark came home at 4 in the morning from what he said was a work emergency, and I went into his email while he showered and found 7 things I made myself forget by sunrise. I had written down their names. 7 of them. Dates, locations, hotel chains. At the bottom of the document, in a font 2 sizes larger, I had written one sentence to my future self. If you're reading this again, it's time. I scrolled to the bottom. I added an 8th name. Vanessa Cole, October. My kitchen. Daughter present. I saved the file. I closed the laptop. I walked down the hall to my daughter's room and lay down on the floor beside her bed in the dark. She was awake. She didn't say anything. After a while, her small hand came down off the mattress and found my hair. I closed my eyes. In 5 hours and 13 minutes, the first package would release. In 6 hours and 41 minutes, 2 FBI agents would knock on my front door, and one of them would be holding a thermos of coffee. In 14 months, my husband would be sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. But that night, on the floor of an 8-year-old's bedroom, with her fingers in my hair and her astronaut nightlight throwing small white moons across the ceiling, I was just a woman who had finally stopped being polite. I slept. 3 weeks before the kitchen floor, Mark told me at breakfast that Vanessa was coming to dinner Friday night. To talk portfolio, he said, refilling his coffee without looking at me. Bobby's been asking questions. She wants to smooth it over. I cracked an egg into the pan. Where's Lily? Sleepover at Maddie's. Already arranged. He had arranged it without telling me. He had arranged a lot of things lately without telling me. The pattern was its own confession. What time? 7. I'll cook duck. He looked up then. Surprised. He'd expected resistance. He'd come downstairs with arguments queued up, and I had handed him acquiescence, and now he didn't know what to do with the silence. Claire. Mark, don't make this weird. I plated his eggs, slid them across the counter, smiled the way I'd been smiling for 9 years. When have I ever made anything weird? She arrived at 6:58 in a navy wrap dress that cost more than my mortgage payment and a bottle of Chateauneuf du Pape that cost more than the dress. Claire. She kissed the air beside my cheek. You look exhausted. Long week at work. You know how it is. I really don't. She handed me the wine and walked past me into my kitchen, bare feet inside the door before I could offer slippers. Mark, baby, where do you keep the corkscrew? Babe. Mark didn't correct her. He found the corkscrew. He poured 3 glasses. He pulled out the chair at my dining table for her like she was the woman of the house and I was the help. And Vanessa sat down and crossed her legs and looked at me over the rim of her glass and waited to see what I would do. I served the duck. We ate. We talked about Aspen. It was fabulous. Vanessa said, dragging her fork through the cherry reduction. The lodge had this incredible private chef Wagyu every night, this Japanese guy flown in from Tokyo. You'd love it, Claire. I refilled her glass. Was that the trip in February or April? Mark went both times for a banking conference. Vanessa's fork paused. Mark's foot hit my shin under the table. April, she said. Just a girls' trip. How nice. I sipped my water. Mark, didn't you say you saw a woman with the same Goyard tote at Aspen in April? You mentioned it when you got home. Said it caught your eye. Did I? You did. At the Four Seasons bar. Tuesday night. The 14th. Vanessa set her fork down. I smiled at her. Small world. The clock above the stove ticked. Mark's wineglass shook the smallest amount in his hand. Vanessa recovered first. She always did. She had Bobby Cole's blood in her. That man could survive a tax audit and a federal subpoena in the same week without spilling his coffee. Speaking of small worlds, she lifted her glass. Daddy says Meridian's the best decision he's made in 20 years. He'd just hate to ever move that money. The threat was so thin you could read newsprint through it. I lifted my glass back. He'd never move it without telling you first, would he? She didn't smile. She reached for her clutch. A small white plastic stick fell out and bounced once on my dining room hardwood floor. 2 pink lines, bright as a stop sign. The room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when 3 people have just understood the same sentence. Vanessa moved first, bent, snatched it, pushed it back into the bag with her thumb. Oh, that's not. I was helping a friend. She didn't want her boyfriend to see. Mark had gone the color of dishwater. I should go. She stood up. The chair scraped. Thank you for dinner, Claire. The duck was perfect. She walked out of my house barefoot, carrying her heels in one hand and the truth in the other. The front door clicked shut. Mark sat at my table with his hand wrapped around his wineglass so hard I thought the stem would snap. It's not mine. I cleared the plates. Claire, did you hear me? It's not mine? I swear to God it's not. Then why are you telling me? He stood up so fast the chair went over. The slap landed on the left side of my face. Open palm. He'd been a rugby player at UNC. His hand was the size of a paperback book. The plate I was carrying hit the floor and broke into 7 pieces. Don't you ever, he said. His voice was very soft. Don't you ever look at me like that again? The garage door rumbled. I heard Maddie's mother's car. Lily had forgotten her stuffed rabbit, and Maddie's mother had driven her home to get it, because that's the kind of woman Maddie's mother is, and that's the kind of neighborhood we lived in where people drive. 8-year-olds home for stuffed rabbits. Mark looked at the broken plate. He looked at my face. He left the room. The mudroom door opened. Lily's small voice. Hi, Daddy. Hi, sweetheart. I knelt down on my kitchen floor in the broken china, pressed 2 fingers against my cheek. The skin was already swelling. I would have a print by morning. A clean handprint, 4 fingers and a thumb, the kind of bruise a forensic photographer would whistle at. I touched it again to make sure. Then I stood up and got the broom. Lily came around the corner with her rabbit. Saw me. Saw the plate. Mommy, why is your face red? I crouched down to her level. I bumped into the cabinet, sweetie. Mommy's so silly. She studied me. Can I have ice cream? Yes. You can have all the ice cream. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat on the edge of the bathtub and called a number Sarah Vega had given me with one instruction. Licensed, expensive, and clean. A man answered on the 2nd ring. Office line. Recorded greeting. This is Claire Hutchinson. I need a lawful surveillance package on a financial crimes matter. Subject is pregnant. I need documentable relationship timelines, hotel records, public movements, receipts, and anything that can survive a subpoena. No medical shortcuts. No tricks. 9 days if you can do it. The man on the other end took a slow breath. Mrs. Hutchinson. The retainer is $3,200, wired to the firm trust account. Invoice and scope letter in your email in 10 minutes. Send it. Subject name. Vanessa Cole. Daughter of Bobby Cole, Carolina Land Holdings. The pause was longer this time. Ma'am. That's a name. I know whose name it is. 12 days. Not 9. 10. I'll do what can be done cleanly in 10. I hung up. I went into the bedroom. Mark was already asleep. He always slept after he hit me. The first time had been 18 months ago. a shove that I had let myself call an accident for 9 days, and afterward he had slept like a baby, and I had lain awake calculating how long it would take him to escalate. The pattern said 60 days to the next incident. He'd held to within 4% of the prediction every single time. I lay down beside him and stared at the ceiling and waited for my heart to slow. I got to 7. The phone call came 8 days later, on a Saturday morning in September, while I was at Trader Joe's holding a bag of frozen mango in one hand and my phone in the other. Number unknown, Charlotte area code, Mrs. Hutchinson. Speaking. This is Bobby Cole, Vanessa's father. I'd like to buy you coffee. I set the mango back in the freezer. Where? Founders Hall. 45 minutes. Make it 60. He was already there when I arrived. Corner table by the window. 64 years old, polo shirt under a navy blazer, a Patek Philippe watch I recognized from a Vanity Fair profile 2 years ago. He stood when I walked over, pulled out my chair, didn't smile. Coffee? Black. He waved at the barista without looking. The coffee appeared in under a minute. Bobby Cole was a man who had not waited for anything since 1987. Mrs. Hutchinson. He folded his hands on the table. I know who you were before you were married. I drank my coffee. How? I have a friend who used to work financial crimes cases in Raleigh. Retired now. He recognized your name from an old public corruption trial and pointed me toward enough public records to understand what you used to do. I have known for 9 months. I have not told my daughter. Why are you telling me now? Because she's pregnant by Richard Stern and she thinks I don't know that either. The cup stopped halfway to my mouth. He didn't blink. My daughter has destroyed 2 marriages already, Mrs. Hutchinson. I cleaned up the first one with money. I cleaned up the second one with a non-disclosure that cost me $4 million and a board seat at a Charleston yacht club I never wanted to belong to. I am not going to clean up a third. What do you want? I want her to face consequences. Real ones. The kind that don't disappear when I write a check. The kind that don't come from her father. He slid a small black USB drive across the table. 23 trades. Audio of her bragging on the phone to a friend in Palm Beach about how easy your husband is to handle. Wire transfers from a trust account she thinks is hidden. It's all there. Use whatever you want. Burn the rest. I looked at the USB. I did not pick it up. Why me? Because you're the only person in Charlotte I believe can build a case clean enough that my money can't wash it away. He took a small sip of his coffee. And because you have a daughter, I had a daughter too. Once. I picked up the USB. I put it in my jacket pocket. I stood up. Mr. Cole, if I do this, I do it cleanly and my way. On my timeline. You don't call me. You don't email me. You don't appear in my life again until the verdict. Understood. And when it's done, when the case is over, when her name is in every paper in this state, you don't ask me for forgiveness on her behalf. He looked up at me for the first time. I won't. I left the coffee untouched on the table. I drove home. I added Bobby Cole's 23 trades to the folder on my laptop. The folder grew from 148 items to 171. The PI report arrived 9 days later, encrypted, to a Proton account Mark didn't know existed. I read it in my car in the parking lot at Whole Foods, with the engine off and the windows up and the late September sun coming through the windshield at an angle that made it hard to see the screen. Vanessa Cole was 11 weeks pregnant. The father was not Mark Hutchinson. The father was Richard Stern, 58 years old, married 31 years to Margaret Stern, formerly Margaret Whitfield of the Whitfield family, that owned half the textile mills in the Carolinas before nylon happened. 3 adult children, 2 grandchildren. A house in Myers Park that had been featured in Southern Living the year Lily was born. The PI had hotel receipts, surveillance photos, a dated audio file of Stern leaving Vanessa a voicemail saying he loved her, and they would figure it out. I sat in the car for 20 minutes. I did not cry. I did not smile. I drove home. I made macaroni and cheese for Lily from the box, the kind with the orange powder she liked, and I let her eat it in front of the television because it was Saturday and because I needed to stand in my kitchen for 10 minutes and feel my hands. After she was in bed, I drafted a second email. Recipient: Margaret Stern. Subject line blank. Body: a single PDF, the PI report in full, with a 1-line note on top. Your husband. My husband's mistress. You deserve to know first. I scheduled the email to send at 6:02 a.m. on the same Friday as everything else. 2 minutes after the FBI knocked on my door, I wanted Margaret to read it before her phone started ringing. The next Wednesday, I found out my husband had stolen my signature. 2 brokerage accounts, both opened in 2022, both with my name forged on the signature card, both used to launder commissions Mark was kicking back to himself from Vanessa's insider trades. If the case broke without preparation, I would be indicted first. The accounts were in my name. The IRS would not care that I had not opened them. The IRS does not care about a great many things. I called Sarah Vega in Atlanta from a burner phone. Sarah, it's Hutchinson. Jesus Christ, I haven't heard your voice in 7 years. I need a whistleblower filing. 3 weeks. Can't be done. It has to be. She was quiet a moment. Walk me through it. I walked her through it. When I finished, she said, you have 3 weeks, maybe 4. Tfo. Claire. 2. Sarah. She sighed. Wire me $40,000 by Monday. I'll have papers ready Friday week. And Hutchinson? Yeah, you should have come back to the bureau. I'm coming back now. I hung up. I drove to a coffee shop on East Boulevard called Smelly Cat, where I knew Vanessa got her $7 oat milk latte every Thursday at 4:15 in the afternoon. I ordered a black coffee, and I sat at the table next to hers and I waited. She walked in at 4:16, saw me, froze. Claire. I didn't stand up. I gestured at the empty chair across from me. She sat, slowly. I reached over and took her latte, drank from it, set it down between us. I know about Aspen. I know about Stern. I know the hotel timeline. I know your father called me last Tuesday. The color left her face in stages. What do you want? I stood up, pulled a 20 out of my wallet, set it on the table for her drink. I just wanted to see your face when you realized I'm not who you thought I was. I walked out. She did not call Mark. She called her father. Bobby Cole did not pick up. She called him 11 more times before midnight. He let every single one of them go to voicemail. The thing about Mark was that he came home angrier when he'd been humiliated by a woman who wasn't me. 2 days after Smelly Cat, the garage door rumbled at 6:22 p.m. 11 minutes earlier than usual, which meant he'd skipped his after-work scotch with the Charlotte Squash Club regulars, which meant Vanessa had finally returned one of his calls. I was at the stove making chicken piccata. Lily was at the kitchen island doing fractions. He came through the mudroom door without taking off his shoes. Lily, upstairs, now. Lily looked at me. I nodded once. Take your math, baby. I'll bring up dessert in a few minutes. She gathered her papers slowly. She did not look at her father. She walked past him with the careful spine of an 8-year-old who had learned to read a room before she had learned to read chapter books. The bedroom door clicked upstairs. Mark waited until he heard it. Then he picked up my phone off the kitchen counter and threw it against the refrigerator. The screen shattered into a constellation of small green lines and went dark. Stay, he said. His voice was even. Away. From her. I turned the heat down under the chicken. She came to my house first. Mark. You don't know what you're playing with. Don't I? Her father? Bobby Cole. I wiped my hands on the dish towel. Carolina Land Holdings. 180 million in assets under management. Wife took 40 in the divorce in 2012. Owns the building you have your gym membership in. Sat on the board of the Mint Museum until last spring when he resigned over a budget vote. Drives a 2019 Range Rover autobiography in dark blue. I know exactly who I'm playing with. Mark stood very still. How do you... I'm a compliance officer. I picked up his shattered phone and dropped it into the sink. It's literally my job to know our top clients. He stared at me. The thing he was looking for was not on my face. He had never known how to find it. 9 years of marriage, and he had never once asked me what I had done before we met, because he had never once needed me to be a person large enough to need asking. He walked past me into his study and slammed the door. I heard him pour himself a drink. I heard him call Vanessa. I heard him say her name 3 times in the kind of voice a man uses when the woman on the other end is already speaking and not listening. I went upstairs and gave Lily a brownie out of the freezer. Did Daddy yell? A little. Eat your brownie, baby. Mommy. Yeah. When does Daddy go away? I sat down on the edge of her bed. I did not lie to her. I had decided somewhere around day 90 of the 173, that I would not lie to her about this. Soon, sweetheart. Very soon. She nodded, took a bite of her brownie, did not ask anything else. That was a Wednesday. The kitchen floor was Friday. She came to the door at 9:15 on a Friday night and she did not knock. I was in the family room with a glass of seltzer and a paperback I wasn't reading. The doorbell didn't ring. I heard the lock turn. Vanessa let herself in with a key. She stood in my foyer in a black slip dress and bare feet. She'd left her heels in the car. This time she'd planned that, and she said, "Mark's not home yet. I'll wait." I set the seltzer down. "Mark's not coming home until 11. That's fine. I have time." She walked past me into my kitchen. She opened my wine fridge. She took out the Pinot, the bottle Mark and I had been saving for our anniversary, the one with the note in his handwriting around the neck. 10th anniversary. Do not open under any circumstances. She used my corkscrew. She poured herself a glass. She turned around and leaned against my counter and looked at me with the small, blank smile of a person who has been waiting all week to do exactly this. "You know what your problem is, sweetie?" She lifted the glass. "You think this house is yours." I crossed my arms. "It is mine. Title's in my name. Yours isn't. Mark says you bought it before him. So sad. Almost like you knew." I did know. She blinked. The rehearsed part of her face went out for a half second and the real face underneath looked at me and didn't recognize what it was seeing. "Lily's asleep upstairs," I said. "Lower your voice. Lily's a beautiful child. She'll be fine. Children are resilient. Get out of my house." "I'll wait for Mark." "Get out of my house, Vanessa." She took another sip. The garage door rumbled. I didn't move. Mark came in through the mudroom and saw her at the counter with my anniversary wine in her hand, and his face did something I had not seen it do in 9 years. Not anger, not even surprise, recognition. He had told her not to come, and she had come anyway, and now he was looking at her the way a man looks at a loaded gun he forgot he handed someone 6 months ago. "Vanessa, what are you?" She screamed at me. Vanessa's voice cracked perfectly on the second syllable. The crack was a tell. The crack was a poker player tapping her cards. She said horrible things. About me. "About the baby," she said. "Claire!" Mark's voice flattened. "She's lying, Mark. Get on your knees and apologize." "No." He crossed the kitchen in 3 steps. I did not move. I could have. Krav Maga teaches you to break a man's wrist in less than a second when he reaches for your throat. I knew exactly which 2 bones to push and which direction to push them, and how much pressure it would take to drop him to the tile screaming. I let him grab me. I let him drive me down. The back of my head clipped the lower cabinet on the way down. White light flashed behind my eyes. Sarah had told me the rule 2 months earlier. If he touches you, survive first, document second, decide later. Do not make the room about your hands unless you have no choice. The tile was very cold. His hand closed around my throat. "Apologize. To her. Right now. Or I swear to God, Claire." I tasted copper. I counted backward from 10. I got to 7. Let go. Vanessa took a sip of the Pinot. I rolled onto my side. You know the rest. What you don't know yet is what happened in the 11 seconds after I whispered, "Okay." Mark exhaled. "Good. Good girl." Vanessa set down her wine. Then she reached into the front of her slip dress, between her breasts, and pulled out an iPhone in a clear case. The red recording dot was on. It had been on the entire time. "Just in case," she said. "You try to spin this. Insurance." Mark's head snapped around. "What the fuck, Vanessa?" "For both of us, baby. In case she goes to the police. We need a record of who started it." She smiled at me. "You came at me, Claire. That's what the audio says. You came at me and Mark had to pull you off." I sat up on the kitchen floor with blood on my lip and a print already forming on my throat and looked past her shoulder, not at her phone but at the pantry shelf behind it. The small child safety camera blinked once. Recording, visible, ordinary. Solid? Silent, 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 all to 100 because Sarah had said a house with a child in it deserved eyes that did not sleep. Vanessa had just performed for the wrong witness. "Keep talking," I said. Vanessa's smile slipped. "What?" "If this is insurance, Make sure the policy is complete." She didn't answer. She had just realized what she had done. Her face did the slow thing faces do when a person who is very good at chess suddenly understands she has been playing checkers all night with a grandmaster. Mark followed my eyes to the pantry shelf. "Claire, turn that off." "No." His face changed. A creak on the stairs. "Lily." I stood up off the floor before Mark could turn around. Wiped my mouth. Walked past him to the bottom of the stairs. "You already saw this part. You saw me tell her to go back to bed. You saw her ask who that lady was. You saw her go up. What you did not see was Vanessa, after the bedroom door clicked, looking at me with the wine still in her hand and saying very quietly, 'You don't want her to wake up to police, do you, Claire?' The threat went into my chest like a needle. I looked at her. I memorized her face. 'No,' I said, 'I don't want that.'" Mark exhaled. He thought I had just agreed to something. I had just decided what time the email would send. Vanessa went to the powder room 10 minutes later to fix her lipstick. Mark walked her to her car. He stayed out there 14 minutes. I watched the time on the microwave clock. When he came back inside, he poured himself a bourbon and went into his study and shut the door and did not come out. I waited until the hallway was quiet. Then I went to the pantry shelf, removed the camera's memory card, and replaced it with the blank one I had taped under the shelf in July. No passwords. No stolen phone. No trick. My house. My camera. My child asleep upstairs. I climbed the stairs. I checked on Lily. I closed her door. I went into the bedroom and opened the laptop and opened the package I had drafted on Tuesday. I added one final attachment. Kitchen 1012, 9 p.m. MP4. I scheduled the release for 6 o'clock the following morning. I clicked the green button. The folder closed. I sat in the dark for a long minute. Then I went into Lily's room and lay down on the floor beside her bed and waited for sunrise. At 5:47 a.m., Mark's phone rang. He woke up the way men wake when their phone rings before dawn. Confused first, then irritated. Then by the third ring, when he saw the name on the screen, afraid. I was already downstairs in the kitchen pouring coffee. I had been awake since 4. He answered in the upstairs hallway. I could hear his side of the call clearly because the floor plan of the house I had bought in 2017 channels sounds straight down the back staircase into the kitchen, and because I had bought this house with that staircase and that acoustic in mind. "Mom? A pause? Mom, it's almost 6 in the morning. What? A longer pause. "What affidavit?" I set the coffee pot down. Mom, slow down. What Daniel said, what? I went to the back staircase and stood at the bottom and listened. Eleanor Hutchinson was 66 years old and had taught middle school English in Cleveland Heights for 31 years and had never once in her son's adult life called him before 7 a.m. She was calling him now. "The trust your father left you," I heard her say through the phone, faintly, the way you hear a radio in another room. "Daniel told me what you did with the money. About the woman. About the trades. Your wife came to me 6 weeks ago, Marky. I signed the affidavit. I gave her the bank records. I gave her the letters." Mark's voice broke. 6 weeks ago? Your father was a good man. He just didn't make money. There's a difference between those two things. I should have taught you that. I'm sorry I didn't." She hung up. The silence in the upstairs hallway was the kind of silence that happens when a man understands, for the first time in his life, that the people he has spent 41 years underestimating have been quietly preparing for this morning. What Mark did not know yet, what he would not learn until the first discovery hearing weeks later, was that Eleanor had not been my first stop in Cleveland. I had flown there in late June. I had rented a car at Hopkins International. I had driven first to a small ranch house in Lakewood that belonged to Daniel Hutchinson, his uncle, the man whose money laundering case I had recused myself from in 2017. Daniel had opened the door in a bathrobe holding a cup of instant coffee. "Agent Hutchinson," he said. He had not seemed surprised. "I wondered when you'd come. Special Agent Hutchinson is retired. I'm Mrs. Mark Hutchinson now." "Are you? I need your nephew." He had looked at me a long moment over his coffee. He was 68 years old and the federal government had been 3 months from indicting him on a different RICO matter, and he knew it and I knew it and he knew I knew it. "What do I get?" "A phone call from AUSA Marcus Chen," he'll explain. He stood aside. I went into his living room. We talked for 2 hours. He gave me the trust documents, the wire transfer records, the names of the shell companies Mark had used to route money to Vanessa. He gave me a recorded conversation from January, in which Mark had bragged to him over Thanksgiving brandy about the little blonde at the bank who's making me very rich. When I left, Daniel walked me to the door. Hutchinson. Yeah. I always wondered why you recused yourself from my case. You know why. I know now. He held the door open. Tell me something. The whole 9 years. Did he ever once ask? No. He nodded. Then he deserves what's coming. I drove to Eleanor's house in Cleveland Heights. I knocked on her door with a folder under my arm. She read it standing at her kitchen table while her tea went cold. When she finished, she set the folder down. She took off her reading glasses. She folded them. She set them on top of the folder. I raised him better than this, she said. Or I thought I did. She looked up at me. Tell me what you need. I told her. She did it. At 5:58 a.m. on Saturday morning, while Mark stood in the upstairs hallway of my house holding a phone that had just gone dead in his hand, I poured myself a second cup of coffee. The kitchen was quiet. Lily was still asleep upstairs. I had 2 minutes. I sat down at the kitchen island. I waited. At 6 o'clock exactly, the 7 emails sent. I heard Mark's phone start to vibrate against the bathroom counter upstairs at 6:03. By 6:05, it had stopped vibrating because the calls had begun coming in faster than the phone could log them, and the buzzing had turned into one continuous drone. I poured cream into Lily's cereal and called her name softly up the back stairs. Cinnamon Toast Crunch is ready, baby. She came down in her moon pajamas with her rabbit, climbed onto her stool, started eating. Mommy, why is Daddy's phone making that noise? Daddy's having a busy work morning. On a Saturday? Sometimes Saturday is busy. She nodded the way an 8-year-old nods when she has decided to accept an answer she does not entirely believe, because the cereal in front of her is more interesting than the truth. Mark came down the stairs at 6:12. He was wearing the same shirt he had slept in. His hair was wet on one side and dry on the other. His phone was in his hand and he was staring at it the way a man stares at a page in a language he used to speak fluently and has forgotten. Claire. I poured my third coffee. Claire. What did you do? I did my job. He took a step toward me. His free hand came up. Lily looked up from her cereal. I set the coffee pot down, picked up my own phone from the counter, turned the screen toward him. The video app was already running. The red dot was already blinking. Try it. Please. He stopped. The doorbell rang. I did not move. It rang again. Lily, take your bowl to the family room and turn on cartoons. Can I? Now, sweetheart. She slid off her stool, carried her cereal with both hands, went around the corner. I walked to the front door. I opened it. Diana Reeves stood on my porch in a gray pantsuit with her badge clipped to her belt and a thermos in her left hand. Behind her was a man I didn't recognize, and behind him were 2 Charlotte Mecklenburg uniforms. Diana looked at me. I looked at her. We had not seen each other in 3 years. Coffee? I said. She held up the thermos. Brought my own. Come in. She came in. The man followed. The uniforms stayed on the porch. Mark was still standing in the kitchen with his phone in his hand. Diana's voice was very calm. Mark Hutchinson. I'm Supervisory Special Agent Diana Reeves with the FBI. This is Special Agent Torres. You're under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and aggravated identity theft. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Do you understand these rights as I have read them to you? He did not answer. He was looking at me. He was looking at the way Diana had walked into my house, the way she had said my name on the porch, the way her shoulders had dropped half an inch when she saw me, the way old colleagues' shoulders drop when they see each other after a long absence. Mark! Diana's voice sharpened. Do you understand? Yes. Torres stepped forward with the cuffs. Diana glanced sideways at me as he closed them on Mark's wrists. Good to see you, Hutchinson, she said. Or should I say, Agent Hutchinson? The room went still. Mark's head turned in slow degrees, the way a head turns when the neck doesn't quite want to obey. Agent. I looked at him for the first time that morning. Special Agent. Class of 2010. Charlotte Field Office. Financial Crime Squad, 2012 to 2018. I set the coffee cup down. 9 years, Mark. And you never asked me one time what I did before we met. He opened his mouth. He closed it. Torres tightened the cuffs. They walked him to the front door. On the threshold, he turned around. His eyes were red. You destroyed everything. No, I said. I documented what you destroyed. There's a difference. The door closed behind him. Lily came around the corner with her empty cereal bowl. She looked at the closed door. She looked at me. Where did Daddy go? I knelt down on the foyer rug. Daddy made some bad choices at his job, baby. Some people came to ask him questions. He's going to be away for a while. Like a long work trip? Yes, like that. Is he coming back? I held her eyes. No, sweetheart. He isn't. She thought about this for a long second. Then she said, "Can I have another bowl of cereal?" I picked her up and carried her into the kitchen and gave her another bowl of cereal. I poured a fourth cup of coffee. I sat down at the island. I watched my daughter eat. The phone in my pocket buzzed. A text from Diana. You okay? I typed back. 9 years. She wrote back. We'll talk Monday. The task force could use your brain again, if and when you're ready. I put the phone down. At 6:47 a.m., Vanessa called. I let it ring twice. Then I put the phone in the center of the kitchen island and pressed the speaker button and went back to sipping my coffee. Claire, oh my God, please. Vanessa, Claire. The FBI just left my apartment. They took my computer. They took my phone. They took everything. Claire, please, you have to. Margaret Stern read the report at 6:02. Her attorney filed a preservation notice by 6:30. Richard has been placed on emergency administrative leave by the Meridian Board. FINRA has opened an enforcement file. Your license is not suspended yet, Vanessa, but it is no longer yours to protect with charm. A long silence. My license. Your attorney should call FINRA before noon. Oh my God. Your father froze your discretionary access to the Cole Family Trust at 5:45 this morning. He authorized the paperwork at 5:30 before going for his usual run. What? Your father, Vanessa. My daddy wouldn't. Daddy already did. 3 months ago. He came to me, Vanessa, not the other way around. He sat down across from me in Founders Hall and slid a USB drive across the table and asked me politely, please if I could hold you accountable without letting the Cole name buy silence again. The sound on the other end of the phone was the sound a small animal makes when a much larger animal closes its jaws around its neck. You're lying. I'm not. You're lying. Call him, right now, while I'm on the phone. Call your father. I heard her switch lines. I heard the phone ring. I heard it ring again. I heard it ring 6 times. I heard it go to voicemail. I heard her switch back. She was crying so hard she could not form the consonants of my name. I let her cry into the speaker for 45 seconds. I sipped my coffee. Then I said, Vanessa, listen to me very carefully. You are pregnant. Your first call after this should not be to Mark, and it should not be to me. It should be to a lawyer who can protect your child from the consequences of what you did before she ever had a name. Your father has already retained family counsel. The court will decide what happens next. Not your tears, not your money, and not whatever story you plan to tell about my kitchen. I leaned closer to the phone. And Vanessa, one more thing. Whatever happens in court, whatever sentence you receive, whatever job title disappears from your name, I want you to remember which room you were standing in when you said children are resilient. I hung up. I blocked her number. I poured a 5th cup of coffee. Lily looked up from her cereal. Mommy, who was that lady? Nobody, baby. Nobody anymore. 4 months later, in a small conference room at Hayes and Vega Family Law in Uptown Charlotte, I signed the divorce papers. Mark sat across from me in a county-issued blue jumpsuit. He had lost 18 pounds. His face had the gray sheen of a man who had not seen direct sunlight since November. His attorney slid the papers across the table. I signed each line without reading. When I was done, I capped the pen. I set it on top of the documents. Mark looked at me. Was it worth it? You asked me to apologize to her, Mark. Do you remember what I said? Okay, that was the last word I ever wasted on you. I stood up. He stood too. The deputy at the door tensed. Mark held his cuffed hands up in apology, and the deputy relaxed. Claire. I waited. Were you ever real? I thought about it. Everything, I said, except the part where I was small. I picked up my purse. I walked out. In the elevator down, my phone buzzed. A text from Lily, sent through her grandmother Eleanor's phone. Mommy, can we get tacos? I typed back. Yes, baby. Soft or crunchy? Both. I smiled. The elevator opened. I went outside into the November sunlight. The sentencing came 14 months after the kitchen floor. Federal Courthouse. Charlotte. 4th floor, courtroom 4. I sat in the back row in a black wool dress. Eleanor Hutchinson sat to my left in a dove-gray suit she had bought for the occasion. Bobby Cole sat 2 seats to my right with his hands folded in his lap and his eyes forward and his silver hair freshly cut. The judge read Mark's sentence first. Securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, aggravated identity theft tied to the accounts opened in my name. The domestic violence count remained in state court, folded into a permanent protective order and a separate plea that kept him away from Lily and me. Total federal sentence: 126 months. 10.5 years. Restitution to Meridian Trust. Restitution to me. Licenses revoked. Personal bankruptcy. A record that would follow every job application, every apartment form, every introduction for the rest of his life. Mark would walk out of federal custody in his 52nd year if good behavior carried him that far. Lily would be 19. He did not look at me when the sentence was read. He looked at his mother. Eleanor did not look back. The judge moved on to Vanessa. Conspiracy to commit securities fraud. Tax evasion. A plea agreement that saved the court a trial and saved her nothing that mattered. Total sentence: 48 months, 4 years. Restitution. IRS penalties. Professional licenses revoked. A family court guardianship plan for the baby to be reviewed after birth, with Bobby Cole appointed temporary guardian only after a judge signed the order and a social worker said the word stable out loud. Bobby did not move. Vanessa was let out first. She was visibly pregnant under her jail-issued blouse. Her hair was unwashed. She had tried to make eye contact with her father in the gallery, and he had not turned his head. Mark was let out second. The marshal walked him past my row. He looked at me one time. I did not look back. I was reading a text from Lily. Grandma Eleanor says we can get a puppy. I texted back, "We'll talk about it, baby." The courtroom emptied. On the courthouse steps in the cold November air, Eleanor took my hand. "Claire." "Yes." "I'm sorry. You don't have to be. I gave birth to him. You also helped me end him," she cried then. The first time I had ever seen her cry. I gave her the tissue I kept in my coat pocket for exactly this moment, because I had known on the flight back from Cleveland in June that there would come a day on a courthouse step when this woman would need a tissue and no one else would think to bring one. Bobby Cole walked past us without speaking. He paused at the bottom of the steps. He turned around. He looked up at me. He nodded once. I nodded back. He got into a black car at the curb and was driven away. Lily came around the corner from the bench where she had been waiting with the social worker the court had assigned. She was wearing the small navy peacoat I had bought her in October. Her stuffed rabbit was inside her backpack with one ear sticking out the top. "Mommy, are we getting ice cream?" "Yes, baby. Can Grandma Eleanor come?" "Yes. And can we tell her about my new room?" "Yes." We walked 3 blocks to a place called Two Scoops on Tryon Street. Lily ordered chocolate. Eleanor ordered strawberry. I ordered coffee black. We sat by the window. Lily told Eleanor about the new house in Dilworth, the one with the small fenced yard and the bay window, and the second bedroom painted the exact shade of pale blue Lily had picked from a paint chip at Lowe's. Eleanor listened. She asked the right questions. She laughed in the right places. The bell over the door rang. Diana Reeves walked in. She was wearing jeans and a cream sweater. Her badge was not on her belt. She came over to the table and sat down without asking. "Hutchinson. Reeves. The Bureau wants you in D.C. Diana. Not as a badge tomorrow. As a financial crimes consultant first. Training, case review, maybe re-entry if you ever want it. Office of your choice after the paperwork. No pressure." I looked at Lily eating her chocolate ice cream with both elbows on the table because Eleanor had told her she could. "I'll think about it." "That's not a no." It's not a yes either. Lily comes first. Diana nodded. She reached across the table and took a small bite of Lily's ice cream with the spoon Lily offered her. Let me know by January. She left. Lily watched her go. Mommy. Yes, baby. What does special agent mean? I set down my coffee cup. I looked at my daughter, 8 years old, chocolate ice cream on her chin, alive, safe, mine. It means Mommy used to help find the truth when people tried to hide money behind lies. Before you were born, are you good at it now? I thought about the kitchen floor. I thought about the 173 days. I thought about the release I had scheduled at 11:47 on a Friday night while a little girl pretended to sleep upstairs. I smiled. The first real smile in a long time. Yes, baby. I'm very good at it now. Lily nodded, took another bite of her ice cream, considered the world. Mommy. Yeah, I love you. I love you too, baby. Outside the window, the November sun moved behind a cloud and came out again. Eleanor reached over and took my hand under the table. I squeezed back. 9 years. 9 fucking years. And the woman he married was the one thing he never bothered to know. If you've stayed with me until the end of this story, then there's something you already know in your bones, and I want you to hear it said out loud, because women like us were not raised to say it out loud. You are allowed to be the dangerous one in your own marriage. Not dangerous, the way Mark was dangerous, not with your hands, not with your voice raised in a kitchen at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, not with your weight on top of someone smaller than you. That kind of dangerous is the cheap kind. That kind of dangerous is the kind that ends up in handcuffs on a Saturday morning in front of an 8-year-old eating cereal. You are allowed to be dangerous the other way, the quiet way, the patient way. The way Claire was dangerous, which is to say, you are allowed to know things and not say them, and to keep knowing them and to wait. Here is what this story wants you to take home with you tonight. Because it isn't really a story about revenge, even though it looks like one. It's a story about a woman who made herself small for 9 years because she thought love required it, and who finally understood on a kitchen floor, with her daughter on the staircase behind her, that the smallness was not the price of love. The smallness was the price of his comfort. There is a difference between those two things, and most of us spend half our lives mistaking one for the other. If you have spent any number of years convincing a man that you are less than, you are softening your career, hiding your salary, downplaying a degree, walking past a compliment you earned without claiming it, then I want you to ask yourself something. And I want you to answer honestly, just for tonight, just inside your own head where no one else can hear. Who taught you to do that, and what did it cost you? And is that bill still being paid? Because here is the part nobody tells you when you're 28 years old, holding a borrowed bouquet, walking down an aisle toward a man with a charming scar on his chin. A marriage that requires you to be smaller than you are is not a marriage. It is a long, slow audit of everything you used to be, conducted by a man who never bothered to ask what was on your resume before you put on his last name. Document what you know. Keep it somewhere safe. Build the file even if you never use it. Trust the small voice at the back of your throat that has been trying to tell you something for months or years now. That voice is not paranoia. That voice is the part of you that was a special agent before you were anyone's wife. That voice is the part of you that survived your mother, your first job, your first heartbreak, your first child. That voice has never once been wrong, and you have spent too long teaching yourself not to listen to it. So tell me, in the comments below, because I really do want to know, what is the one thing about yourself that you stopped saying out loud the day you got married? And how long has it been since you said it? And what, my friend, would it cost you to say it again, starting tomorrow morning, over coffee, to no one but yourself? I'll be reading every reply. Take care of each other.